Angelo, it's so nice to have you back on again. I absolutely loved our interview and I love this stuff. Look here, I've got two of them here and they're both empty because I've been using them and I need to go dig out the other ones. I use them every single day. These Kion Aminos are fantastic. I love them. They taste good and make me feel good. And the days that I don't use them, I do not have the same level of energy and focus. So you're the expert and I'm so thrilled to have you back to tell my audience why I love Kion Aminos so welcome.
Well, I'm so happy to be back. Thanks for having me, Dr. Leaf.
So great. Okay, so Angelo, we're talking about amino acids here and proteins and things that people hear a lot about, but I don't know if people really fully understand them. So let's dive into talking about, what is an amino acid? What is, a protein? How does it work together? And, from there, there's a bunch of other questions that I'd love to dive into in terms of mental health and males and females and all kinds of stuff.
Sounds great. So I think I'll give a couple quick definitions and then try to just make it really practical for people. So amino acids are the building blocks of proteins. So proteins, wherever they exist in nature, they're made up of these little smaller things called amino acids. So that's just so you know, that's the basic idea. But then let's talk more about proteins and what proteins are and why they're so important and how they impact us in so many ways. So lots of people probably think about protein as one of the main macronutrients. And maybe you don't even know that word, but you think about carbohydrates in my diet, carbs and fats, and then protein. And then people are trying to think about, which ones they need more of and how much, et cetera. And a helpful thing for, I think, a lot of people to know is that protein is very different than carbohydrates and fat. Carbohydrates and fat, the primary reason why we eat them is for energy. So when I eat carbohydrates it could be in rice, it could be in bread, it could be in vegetables. When I digest those carbohydrates, my body converts them into a natural energy source called ATP. It doesn't really matter what it's called, but just know it's the energy that you burn so that your heart can beat, so that you can move, so that you can breathe, etc. And fats are really similar. You eat a fat and your body breaks it down and converts it into energy. Ultimately the same type of energy source of ATP. So you think about yourself as like a car or a house, you could put gasoline in your car, or you could charge it and you're giving it energy. The same thing with your house. You're buying energy from electrical grid, or you've got solar panels, etc. On the other hand, protein is actually what makes us up physically. So let's say you wanted to not just, run your dishwasher, but you wanted to remodel your bathroom because it's kind of old. It doesn't look as good as it used to look and it's outdated. Or maybe one of the doors or the hinges on a door broke and you need to fix it or replace it. Similarly, maybe one of the knobs in your car broke. Well, our body is actually really similar. Over time, parts of our body break down and they don't work as well. And many of those parts are proteins. And so people, I think sometimes maybe think, oh, well, the proteins, are the proteins in my body the same as the proteins that we eat? And they're not the exact same, but they're very closely connected because one helps build the other one. So our bodies, after you take out the water, it's over 50% of us is water, really just liquid. After that, the part that's solid, over half of that is made up of proteins. And that includes things like, I think more obviously, most people get it like your muscles, but it's also your vital organs. So it's your heart, your kidneys, and your liver. It's things like your skin. It's what makes up your hair, your nails, your eyes. All these different parts of our body are made up of proteins. And just like the way that our house, maybe our car functions, those proteins start to break down and they don't work as well. And so if I just take, say, a part of my skin, it's made up of millions of proteins, but each little one only has a certain half-life. It only lasts for so long before it's not functional anymore, and it basically gets too old. And that protein breaks down naturally, and when it breaks apart into these amino acids. That's the building blocks of it, and there's 20 of them. And the old ones, we actually just pee them out. They're not useful anymore, and we excrete them as urea. Yeah. But some of the amino acids are still good. If you're remodeling your house and maybe you realize this beam, I could reuse that beam. It would actually look really good here. Some of the amino acids are good enough to get to be reused. And so if I have a little, piece of tissue, my skin or my heart or my liver or my kidneys, it needs to get rebuilt. Well, immediately, if I just excreted or peed out part of the amino acids, I need new amino acids that are going to help me to rebuild that liver tissue, that heart, that kidney, etc. That's why we eat protein. When we eat protein, whether it comes from plant sources or animal sources, we digest it, we break it down, the little individual amino acids go into our blood, they get supplied throughout our whole body, and it helps to rebuild liver, kidney, hearts, muscle, skin, hair, all of these different things. And I think maybe really unique and interesting to your audience, it also helps to rebuild enzymes. So enzymes come from proteins, as do hormones and neurotransmitters. So the chemicals, which I'm sure you've talked about with your audience before, that through which we experience emotions, right? These are actually the metabolites of amino acids, or they're amino acids themselves. So you start to see how, wow, ensuring that I'm consuming enough of the right proteins and the essential amino acids in them will ensure that I have really healthy function and the ability to rebuild all these proteins and amino acids that fuel my life. Not from an energy perspective, like carbs and fat, but from actually like making me whole and functional.
What a brilliant explanation. I love that. You did a really great job there. I felt like I had 101 amino acid protein, which is important. So you've highlighted a few very interesting basic concepts. So you've got to take the protein in from outside and how everything pretty much is made of protein. And if we've got 20 essential amino acids that make the proteins, and if we don't get that, we're going to be sitting with broken bathrooms and dishwashers, and eventually that's going to impact our aging, our physical health, and obviously our mental health. Now, there's another aspect that I find very fascinating with proteins and amino acids, and I'd love your take on this too, that when we're thinking like this conversation now is information that's going in via our mind into the mind, brain, and body, and it's actually stimulating a genetic response and making amino acids to make proteins to actually hold this information. So we're growing a protein-like structure made of amino acids into our brain and into our body, every cell of our body, from our conversations. So our conversations are also becoming amino acids. And those amino acids contain vibrations, which is the content of what we're discussing. And that's an angle that I talk about on this show, but it's also, to put it into context, most people would still think amino acids are something that we consume or that our body makes, from what we've consumed. So in order for our body to be able to make those amino acids, to be able to take life and put that into us and build it up, we do need to have an external source as well as, because we've got to have the material to be able to make the amino acids and so on, and which then become the protein. So it's just interesting that food becomes protein. Life also becomes protein. Proteins are made of amino acids. So I'm just kind of stressing and underscoring the importance of an amino acid becoming, and this is Kion Aminos. So you've done something where you try and make this more accessible. So first of all, if from our talking and experiences, this becomes amino acids. If from the food we take in, this is then going to, as you said, break down into amino acids that go into our blood, and then our body will use it to rebuild the protein that we need. So there's a breaking down and a building. Then why do we need to to have extra? Why do we need to supplement? What does that all mean? And what is the essential amino acids? So a little bit more technical stuff that I'd
Absolutely.
love to.
So I think that's a great introduction to what are essential amino acids. I think if you jump into that right at the beginning, you could start to confuse people. But if you understand, we're consuming protein because it has this ability to give us these amino acids. Well, it doesn't just have, there's actually two different kinds. And there's more division in this, but for most of us, what's important to know is there's the essential ones and the non-essential ones. The essential ones are the ones that we actually cannot make. Our body cannot synthesize them. We must consume them through our diet. And there's 9 of them. And so when I eat a piece of protein as food, in many cases, if it's an animal protein, I'm going to be getting all 20 of those amino acids. But 11 of them I don't need as much. Actually, some of those will just get converted into sugars and into urea, and they won't play this primary role in helping me build new proteins. But the 9, I'll use all of them. They're the ones that are actually going to stimulate. They're going to communicate to my body to build new proteins and to replace older skin and to, grow new hair and to build new muscle and to support, rebuilding heart tissue, et cetera. But the other 11 are not as important. And so when you evaluate Well, I'll just say this too. Your body can also make those other 11. Your body actually can synthesize them, and it can synthesize other amino acids like the neurotransmitters that become our thoughts, feelings, experiences. But those 9, when they're really important, because when you think about eating protein, you really want to be eating protein that has all 9 of those, that is very rich in them, meaning there's more of the 9 than just the 11. It's the highest dose, and they're really digestible. And so I think overall, when you choose to, have a whole food focused diet, you really want to be thinking about those types of things. And I think typically it is more, animal proteins are richer in them. You can do it with plant proteins, but you want to be more thoughtful. Eat things like soy and buckwheat and quinoa and mixed legumes and grains. Whereas if you eat eggs and eat some dairy products, they're very, like Greek yogurt, it's very rich in it. Like right off the bat, you're getting them all. So I think that's a good example. If you like to be more plant-based, then choosing to use a supplement like Kion Aminos will really support that decision, because it doesn't require having to eat as many of animal products, et cetera, to try to get that rich essential amino acid complex. I think the other thing, though, is as we age, and this is some of the more really interesting research that's come out over the last 20 years, and I don't mean like one paper, 2 papers, hundreds of papers. Actually, the International Society of Sports Nutrition, which is a great resource for anyone who wants to know if supplements are legit or not. Like, they do fabulous reviews of all the science. They recently came out with a big position paper last year that reviewed all the research. And what's really clear is that as we age, and this really starts at age 30, our ability to digest proteins and to get the essential amino acids out of them becomes greatly reduced. And how sensitive we are to utilizing those essential amino acids to stimulate new proteins becomes reduced, which makes sense. If you look the skin of a 20-year-old person versus a 60-year-old person, or the muscle mass of a 20-year-old person versus a 60-year-old person, like the 20-year-old person looks stronger, their skin looks more youthful, et cetera. It's because our body's not prioritizing rebuilding these proteins. Well, when you take something like an essential amino acid supplement, it overcomes that anabolic resistance, that resistance to not wanting to build new proteins, because it's so highly bioavailable. It's in these very, not perfect, but the most ideal proportions of the essential amino acids without the non-essential, and your body can just digest them. And so it stimulates so much more protein synthesis than, say, just trying to eat one more piece of chicken, or trying to, cram in protein powders throughout the day. And so rather than thinking, oh, I'm going to start taking this supplement instead of eating good quality whole food meals, I think one major thing to think about is, as we all age, in addition to trying to eat protein-rich meals, by adding in something like an essential amino acid supplement first thing in the morning, or during an afternoon snack, or before you go on a walk in the afternoon, you are really encouraging your body to rebuild all these proteins throughout your body, and to maintain lean muscle, and to maintain a more youthful look, but also experience. Like, it's going to support reducing fatigue and mood balance, et cetera. So I think it's the kind of thing where, is it the most important thing for an 18-year-old? Like, no. It's going to provide less benefit unless they're a competitive athlete, or unless they're overweight and they're really trying to lose fat and maintain their muscle. But I think for almost everyone, as we age, our ability to extract the value out of the protein in our diet becomes reduced over time. And so that's why and how it can start to make so much sense.
Okay, that's really important. So from the age of, I'm sure that people heard it, but if they didn't, I'm going to say it again. You're getting old from 30. Okay, so you're aging. So from 30, your body cannot do what it used to do. And amino acids making proteins, which is absolutely essential, critical to literally everything about you, is reduced. And so therefore, this becomes something like Kion Aminos becomes a very accessible form that plays with I don't know what the word you used there a moment ago, but it kind of almost tricks the body into...
overcomes. It overcomes the resistance. Yeah, I mean, your body, it overcomes the challenges.
The resistance and the challenges, and therefore keeps your body in a more youthful state, because you're actually providing those amino acids that stop the kind of almost... We don't just have longevity, we'll have health span. So you won't just have long life, you'll have that health span as well. And that's another big key issue, isn't it, and Angelo, that there's so much move for longevity and people living longer, and although there's mental health issues, that the kind of the opposite's happening. But there is a lot of stuff out there that extends people's lifespan, but is it extending the health span? And if you don't have enough protein and enough obviously amino acids that are accessible, you may increase your lifespan, but is your health span going to increase? So you spoke about the cognitive effects. There's the mental health effects. If we as process life and that life becomes part of our networks physically, we need decent proteins in order to build decent networks that aren't going to collapse throughout the mind, brain, and body connection. So so the tools and the materials that our mind needs to work with need to be good. Now that's how I understand why this is really, the Kion Aminos has really appealed to me, because I can feel the difference. I will put this in the morning with my electrolytes. I actually mix it with electrolyte. Maybe I don't need to, but I just do. It tastes good. And I drink that at going to gym, yoga, saunas, and then I just have a bottle next to me all the time. And so it's just, it's just easy, and it tastes so great. So it just makes water taste, well, I just like drinking coffee all day long. So now at least coffee, I filter in my amino acids. Well, I have water with coffee in. Now I have water with coffee, and I also have amino acids with my coffee. Though. I don't mix them all together. I don't know what Kion Aminos will taste like with coffee. Might be quite good, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I haven't tried that one yet.
No.
The health. I think the health span perspective though is so important. When we say health span, I mean, I just think of that as quality of life. So often we're doing all these things, like people are trying to work so hard to make money, but then sacrificing the time with their loved ones, or they're working so hard to try to be fit to look some way, but then like they don't get to enjoy it. It's like, how do we, and I think then this applies to aging. So it's like trying to take drugs or do certain interventions or do whatever to try to just extend your life. But like, how do we make decisions so that at whatever decade we're in, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, I mean, as things continue to progress with health, like that we can live a really quality life, that we can go on walks with loved ones, that we can go on hikes, that maybe we can still play sports that we like until much older ages than our parents ever did, that we can spend time with grandkids and great grandkids and like have these types of experiences. And there is nothing that I know of that is more directly correlated to all of these things than maintaining lean muscle. You maintain higher activity levels as you age, meaning that you continue to go on walks and do things with friends, play tennis, do whatever it is that you love, right? You have much higher survival rate from cancer, because simply when you get any type of chronic disease or illness, you go into a stress response. Your body doesn't want to build new muscle, and it actually starts to live off the muscle. It breaks down the muscle and takes the amino acids to fuel the rebuilding of the other organs. So if you don't have much muscle and you get a disease, which unfortunately, that is, as we age, we'll ultimately probably get some disease, right? Your ability to survive that is so much more greatly enhanced. The more lean muscle you have, the easier that it is to, muscle actually plays this key role in regulating your blood sugar. It absorbs like 80% of the sugar that you consume in your diet. So the more muscle that you have, it helps regulate that blood sugar. It helps maintain overall better metabolic health, keep you from getting diabetes, et cetera. It's just like when you stack up these things, and this doesn't mean like getting like jacked and being some big bodybuilder type person. It just means not becoming frail at any age, right? Like really being able to maintain lean muscle to where you can pick yourself up. You maybe do a push-up, you could do a pull-up, you could just, you can participate in a Pilates class or a yoga class and not feel stressed out about it. Like you can enjoy your body. And so, yeah, I mean, the choice to invest in something like taking aminos each day and just maintaining this lean muscle is like a savings account for your health. That not only provides value 20, 30 years from now, it actually provides value today too. You're going to have more energy today. You're going to be able to do more things today. You're going to improve your metabolism today. And so it's like, it's a very quality of life type decision.
I love that. I love that it's like insurance for your, it's health insurance for your lifespan insurance, not the money side. It's for your health insurance. And I like the fact that, the muscle, a lot of people think, I don't want to build too much muscle. This is Kion Aminos or Aminos are not going to build muscle that's going to make you bulky, as you said, stat. It's giving you the muscle that you need for good metabolic health, for all the things that you said. In fact, could you just stress that again? Just talk about the importance of muscle and Because I know sometimes people think, I'm not going to take more protein. I'm going to get fat. But this is not what amino acids are doing. I've got your word now, stolen your word.
It is not. Yeah, I would just, so I can share more about muscle and just emphasize again, particularly I think women have this concern, and, because at some point they had a partner or learned something somewhere that it's like, oh, the people eat all this protein, they go to the gym and they get so big. I would just say like those people, oftentimes men, but maybe sometimes women who want to get like really strong and big like that, they have to work so hard, and they have to get a personal trainer, and they have to do special types of weightlifting programming, and they have to eat so many calories. They have to do a lot of things for that to happen. I would think about it more this way. Do you think that you have 5 pounds of fat that you would be open to losing, right? And if you think I have 5 pounds of fat I'd be open to losing, instead of just losing that fat and like kind of worshiping the scale and being like, oh, if I could just be 5 pounds less, imagine if that fat instead was transformed into 5 pounds of muscle, and the definition on your arms was a little bit, you liked it even that much more, or on your legs or wherever in your body, and it's evenly distributed throughout your whole body. We're saying like 1 more pound of muscle in each leg, in each arm, or 2 pounds, somewhere in your, in your abdomen and back and all that. It's like very mild, right? Like that's what we're talking about. We're talking about replacing just some of the fat with a little bit of muscle. And that is the type of body transformation we're talking about. We're not talking about like getting super strong. If you really want to do that, you need to take a lot more than like, a serving or 2 of aminos or drink some protein powder. You need to train a lot more. But yeah, I think just on the...
Sorry, do you mind just quickly emphasize that all the things that the lean muscle does again, how that is an insurance for your health?
Yeah. So 1, it improves your overall metabolic health. The more lean muscle you have, and again, it's not saying tons amount, but just you replace 5 pounds of fat with 5 pounds of muscle, you have a higher improved metabolism. You literally will burn more calories just at rest, and you'll burn more calories in any activity that you do because you have to maintain that muscle, and it takes energy. 2, it's going to help you to regulate your blood sugar. Anytime you consume carbs or sugar, it absorbs those sugars. That's the role of muscle. So if you have less muscle, you basically can't sustain eating as many carbs or sugar, et cetera. It'll have a more impactful response on your total blood sugar and insulin. 3rd, I think, reiterating again, muscle is actually the reservoir of amino acids for your whole body. So if you were to ever get injured or to have an illness and you can't move or you can't exercise as much and you're going through stress, you need amino acids for the rest of your body. You need it to maintain your skin, your hair, your heart, your kidneys. You'll actually start to break down that muscle tissue and supply the blood with amino acids that then give amino acids to all the other organs in your body. So you really want that lean muscle, because if you don't have some extra to spare, you're going to suffer a lot more during that illness. You could risk getting even sicker, dying, et cetera. But also, once it's over, hopefully if you've been able to recover from it, it's like you have nothing left. So it is something that you want to invest in and just to maintain and be, honestly, think about trying to be even stronger than maybe you think now, because as you get older, it's going to be that much harder to maintain it. Things that seem very easy now, 20 years from now will not. But if you train to be able to do 1 more pull-up, then you'll be so much stronger at that later date.
Basically saying.
That's it. Yeah. And then the last thing I just say is like staying active. If you have lean muscle, you are going to be able to go on walks. And I mean, right now, like younger ages, you just take it for granted, but there'll be a time when that's not as easy. And hopefully that gets delayed as far into the future as possible. That said, what's really interesting is some of these studies from the last 10 years, and it gets summarized in this ISSN paper, that literally elderly women who were actually struggling with walking started to supplement with the amino acids. It improved like the true human outcomes. It improved their ability to go on walks, to walk longer, and overall improve their fitness. So it's also the kind of thing where it's never too late to start. So I wouldn't take the information as like, if you're 80 years old, it's too late. It's not too late. It's actually, you could start at 80 and you would still get benefits from it. But the sooner we start, the more, again, it's starting to save earlier. It's starting to save earlier versus waiting until
things crash and you've got no money.
Exactly. Yeah.
Proactive. And that really is,
Until things crash and you have no health.
there we go. And, it's like, we want to be proactive, and then that affects your mental health, and, the whole thing just becomes a negative cycle. And also, if your body isn't healthy, as I've mentioned already, your mind has got to work through an unhealthy body, and your mind's trying to put life into your mind, brain, body network. And if it's working with something that's broken or weaker, that in itself creates disorder and is going to create mental health challenges. So it's really important that one looks at it not just from a neurotransmitter point perspective, which is the most logical to look at amino acids from, and to think, well, that's mental health. But that's only one tiny, tiny aspect. There's a much bigger reason why we need this reservoir of amino acids, because our mind, brain, body network needs those in order to build life in a healthier way and to manage our mental health. If you're feeling more weak and stuff, immediately that's going to boomerang back into a negative feedback loop and affect us. You mentioned about men and women. Well, I know you talk about this, the difference between the needs of men and women when it comes to amino acids. Can you talk a little bit about that, Angelo?
Yeah. One thing that's really awesome about this subject is how much it's been studied. Unfortunately, a lot of supplements, I would say supplements especially, can happen with drugs, but it happens a lot with supplements where, research institutions only have so much money to study something, and they only get so much of a budget. And when you do a first study on, say, a supplement or on some type of ingredient, you have to limit your cohort. You have to be like, all right, we're going to do it with, 20-year-old healthy males, or we're going to do it if it's, obviously if it's something more related to, say, women's health, and it could be like, okay, 20-year-old women athletes, or perimenopausal women, or like you isolate the group. Because essential amino acids have been around actually for so long, and have been studied for so many different reasons and have proven themselves. There's hundreds of studies, and there's studies with almost so many different population groups. You've got, and especially women. I think this is one thing that comes up also with like more kind of fitness type nutrition, is they'll study with males first and just assume like, oh, maybe women are like, slightly smaller males. They're not. They're different. They have different biochemistry, they have different hormones, like it doesn't work the exact same. And so luckily, essential amino acids have this huge amount of research with females at all different ages, young athletes, perimenopausal women, kind of pre-middle age, and then also elderly. So all these different groups. And so with that, we can actually speak with more confidence. And so now sharing that information is, women actually are somewhat similar to men, and it's somewhat consistent. So, or men are similar to women, I'll say, in that all of us experience this decrease in the ability to digest protein as we age, and this decrease in how we respond to the amino acids to rebuild proteins. And that means rebuilding skin, muscle, etc. And so if you look at the different ages, like it's pretty clear it progresses, but actually with women, it seems to progress even more. So if you are a perimenopausal woman who's 50 years old, a man of that same age is also going through hormonal changes and also has impacts overall just to how they are digesting protein and how sensitive they are to stimulating new proteins. But it appears to be that women are affected even more during that period. And thus, the degree to which behaviors that they use, really positive behaviors, let's say eating higher protein diets, doing resistance training 3 times a week, simply the results are not as much as what they used to be. And it's a more dramatic decrease in how much lean muscle they're able to maintain, how much protein synthesis is stimulated by exercise, by diet, etc. And so there's really an added benefit, particularly in that time period, for women, I think, to be considering essential amino acids as a supplement. Again, continue to eat good quality, high protein meals. But when you think about, is there something I could add in the morning? Is there something I could have as a snack? If I'm thinking about, using a protein powder, could this actually be better than a protein powder for me in some ways? And that becomes really clear actually when you look at older groups of women. So there's many studies. There's a really convincing one though more recently that basically showed 3 grams of essential amino acids was equal to 20 grams of whey protein powder in terms of stimulating protein synthesis. So over 6 times. Wow. So that would basically be like 1 serving of Kion Aminos would be the equivalent of stimulating protein synthesis of like 30 grams of a protein powder.
Wow.
And that was a cohort of 60-year-old women. And so it's really it's a much more efficient, useful way to potentially supplement your diet than, just trying to add in more protein powders or other solutions like that, particularly as we age, and for women.
No, that's really amazing, because there is, as you said, it's an unregulated industry, the supplement industry. There's not always that much research, and it's confusing for people because there's just so much out there. So I'm very glad that you stressed the fact that amino acids and proteins have had so much research, and that there's been so much research on women, because that is a huge problem, as we know, in the medical field. So it does make this a supplement that is, is, without playing with the word essential, but an essential supplement. You've started your own business. Kion Aminos is your business. Can you talk about, obviously the reasons for doing this, obviously, because you really believe in the product, but just talk about you as an entrepreneur starting a business, how this worked for you. Because so many people, it's a dream to start a business. It's a dream and a goal. And obviously, if it's going to be successful, there needs to be a lot of passion and purpose and all kinds of things behind it. So just share your experience because obviously it's very evident that you believe in this and you know a lot about this field and your product, and that stimulated you obviously to get a business going. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about you as an entrepreneur.
Well, I love that you use the word dream, because I think dream is a lot of how I kind of interpret my own life, both from not just trying to have dreams of what I want to be, but even like how things emerge in life, not always in this very clear, like literal super planned way. Instead, they kind of emerge and come together as these different pieces that somehow kind of all arrive in the same space, in the way like a dream happens. And so, I was raised in a family where natural health and whole food health was really important. My parents had a natural health food store and a natural health food restaurant, and they were entrepreneurs. And I was just raised, thinking about eating really high quality foods, thinking about things like vitamins and supplements, about which ones were really worth it, how and why we take it. And so I was just kind of like immersed in that. That wasn't something I could have planned or, like made my vision. Like that's what I was born into, And as I aged, I think I went more into this story last time, but I got into a lot of trouble. I had a near-death experience. I was severely injured. And at that point at 16, I really wanted to, I was just woken up to life. Like I gotta like figure out, which again, woken up, it's an interesting play on this idea of dreaming, like maybe I was asleep or whatever. But I think I woke up to like, wow, every single thing that I do, whether I choose to do it or I choose not to do it and I avoid it or I wait or I'm patient, it's all gonna manifest in my future. And suddenly these things that were just taken for granted health decisions of my childhood, I think suddenly became much more conscious. Like, whoa, I want to try to really think about what I'm eating. I want to think about how I move and exercise and what books I'm reading. Like, what ideas am I putting in my head? What do I want to study in college? Like, what's going to be really important? And so it took me down a path of like really not super clear cut, but like really wanting to understand a lot more about the meaning of life and how to be healthy and how to form good relationships. And rather than, I think maybe having a really tragic trauma cycle where I just got stuck in it and got super sad, it opened up my life and it turned me on to many more things. And it took me to where I developed a career overseas for many years. But again, I never would have planned that as a kid or as a kid, been like, I want to go work in Europe. It just opened up, and suddenly I was living in France and I had a job there. And suddenly I have a job in India and I live in India. And then, and in this, in this path, I find an amazing woman and she goes with me, and then I proposed to her and now we're married and now we live in Boulder, Colorado, and I'm doing this business and now I have kids. And I think somehow in all of that in 2017, I'd always had this nugget of believing in these types of things, amino acids, protein, and there were the right opportunities. And, I was at the right space in my life and the career and what I had been doing to start the company. And I just did it. And that said, if I fast forward now, where I look past, look at the last 7 years, it was definitely not a straight line. There was a lot of struggles and suffering and things I thought were going to be true and I really understood and I was completely wrong about. Things I was half right about.
So part of it, isn't it? I mean, it's the ability of learning that as soon as we think we know something, that's when the problems start. But when we realize I know a little bit, but I need to know more, and as you say, the convoluted path to get there is so important. I know that you did tell your story last time, but it's a while since we've spoken, and you mentioned you had an NDE experience and you made reference to some challenges and mental health challenges. And we talk a lot about mental health on this podcast. So would you mind just to wrap up this interview, I'd love to talk if you just to tell a little bit about your NDE and, you know, that crisis that really shifted you in the direction where you suddenly really appreciated what you'd grown up with, not that you didn't, and then you shifted in a direction where you're helping people now in a beautiful way. I'd love to just, if you could share a little bit about that and how you currently manage your mental health.
So go back and just share what was this crisis from my adolescence. So so at 16 and a half, I'd found myself being very socially motivated and wanted to be with friends and not with my family and explore things, and got into drugs. And I took way too much LSD. And I had a psychotic break of some form. I was very scared. I was in a neighborhood that was not the best neighborhood. And I very unintentionally provoked these much more hardcore people than me. And they stabbed me twice in the back.
Ooh.
And it required me to have, emergency abdominal surgery. And I got stabbed in the knee. It severed my patellar tendon, so I had to be reattached. And then they beat me. I mean,
gosh,
very, very badly. Like basically I was just black. I look like I've been beaten with baseball bats when I woke up several days later in the hospital. So that experience, I think anyone who's experimented with hallucinogenics and is taking too many, that alone can create a very significant trauma, I think, because it's more, I think, I don't know if it's more than the psyche can handle, but it's just very overstimulating, and it's very scary, and it's disorienting, and a sense of like safety and attachment is just really disrupted. And I think you combine that then with significant severe physical violence on its own. You couldn't write, I don't know, it's like writing like the worst story, of what could happen to a 16-and-a-half-year-old kid. So yeah, I mean, my journey from that has been hard and also just like really beautiful. I was full of like tons of healing, and it's come from a lot of meditation, a lot of silent meditation, a lot of journaling, a lot of talk therapy. I mean, like a lot of talk therapy, but also different types of more experiential, like Gestalt type, like drama therapy type stuff. And I've done, acupuncture and other like nervous system type work. And I've explored all kinds of things. I've done tons of yoga and tons of breath work. And, so in a way, those things, that very scary situation and that trauma opened me up to a whole world of healing modalities and to desiring just the deepest experience I could have now. And now being back then and now right now than maybe I had before. I didn't realize how precious each moment was. And, when I think about it now, it's like, I'm in a very different space now. Now I have a 9 and 11-year-old, and I'm married, and I feel pretty balanced, and my family feels balanced and stable and peaceful. And it's like my ability to be present with them and present with my team at Kion and just present with people and enjoy life. And it's like, it's connected to this health span thing too. It's like, rather than just trying to construct like this, I don't know, some kind of made up idea of what the good life is, like really trying to make the good life now, but also make a good life now that's sustainable into the future. I don't know if it would have happened without that.
So there was something that really shifted you. And you had an NDE as well, you said? So
an NDE?
No, you said near-death experience. That was when you were beaten up. I thought you said you had that you actually died and then came back. Did you?
Oh, no. That was the near-death experience was that.
That was bad enough. That was bad enough.
Yeah, it was, I don't know how many days I was out. And I saw, in that experience I saw, so I didn't quite understand, you asked actually me to describe that. In that experience, I don't know if it was when I felt that there was a sense of like, well, maybe actually someone's here to rescue me, or had it actually happened before that, or when, but I had a very distinct, unique experience I'll never forget of basically like, it was like I was falling like an angel. Mm-hmm. Like I had this image of like an angel, and my arms are outstretched, my legs are outstretched, and I'm falling kind of backwards and just like falling through light. Mm-hmm. And that's the last thing I remember. Then it was very peaceful. I mean, I think all the other stuff was so scary and I was in so much pain. And then I remember that like this falling through light. And then it was several days later and I woke up in a hospital and I was just hurting.
That's amazing. And you turned that, thank you for sharing that. That's really incredible. And you turned that, you took that experience and you shifted. You said something very significant a few moments ago that you're not sure if you'd be where you are now if you hadn't had that experience, but you also took that experience. You chose with your free will to take that experience and to actually move forward. You could have fallen back into the pain of what you'd gone through because that's extreme trauma that you went through. And, you turned it into something you chose with your free will to turn that into something that now helps so many people to have a health span and to understand how to, I love what you said, treasure every moment. That every moment becomes this treasure and that's beautiful. And I think that's a very mentally healthy point for us to stop the interview. I'd love to carry on again, to treasure every moment and you're giving us a way of treasuring every moment. And I know that there's a special offer. I'm just going to make sure I read it correctly. You're going to save 20% off the amino acids, 20% off if you go to getkion.com/Dr. Leaf. So getkion.com/Dr. Leaf for 20% off, and we'll put the link in the details in the show note. So not only are you teaching us to treasure moments, you're teaching us how to make sure that our mind, brain, and body is able to be strong enough to treasure those moments. So thank you, Angelo. Thank you for the product. Thank you for what you've done. And thank you for turning your life around and sharing it with us. We are very grateful.
Well, thank you, Dr. Leaf, for such a wonderful conversation.
I loved it as well. Look forward to talking again.
Bye.
Bye.